to guide you through some similar questions to today's classwork, March 31st. Which equation is represented by the accompanying graph? If you notice here, the graph is starting at 0, 1, which is the maximum. Since it's starting at 0, 1 and a maximum, it's going to be a cosine curve. And if you look closely, we're only really seeing, by the time it gets to pi radians, we're seeing half of the curve, because the other curve would look something such as that. So if we're seeing half of the curve at pi radians, that means that the full cosine curve will end at 2 pi radians. Therefore, the period is 2 pi, because that's the amount of time it's going to take for one full cycle to complete itself. And we know that the formula for period is 2 pi over b. The period, we found out that this curve is going to complete itself at 2 pi radians, so the period is 2 pi. This is equal to 2 pi over b, which means that the b value must be equal to 1. And the b value is in front of x, so we can eliminate choice 2 because that would have a frequency of 1/2. We could also eliminate choice 3 because that would be a frequency of 2. Now we're down to choice 1 and 4. And we're really going to be using the amplitude to make our answer choice. In choice 1, the amplitude is 1 because that's the number in front of cosine. In choice 4, the amplitude is 1/2. And if we look at the maximum height of this function, it's 1, making our amplitude 1. So choice 1 would be the answer that we would choose here. A meteorologist drew the accompanying graph to show the changes in humidity during a 24-hour period of time in New York City. Our input is the time in hours. Our output is the relative humidity as a percentage. The range would be the difference between the max, which is 80, and the min, which is 30. So the range would be 50. And the range is always the y values, so we could eliminate choice 2, we could eliminate choice 4. Since our lowest possible relative humidity is 30% and the highest is 80, choice 3 would be the range that we're looking for. In this question, we're asked to find the amplitude of the function, and we could use when you want to find the amplitude of a graph, you need to use the formula max minus min divided by 2, and then take the absolute value if need be. The max here is the highest value, which is 6. The lowest possible value is 2, so take off 2, and divide by 2, which would be 4 divided by 2, which is 2, making our amplitude equal to 2, choice 2. In this question, we're asked to look at this portion of a sound wave, and which of these sine functions would be the best equation to represent this. If you look, let's look at the amplitude first. We're going to find the amplitude by taking the max, which is 3, taking off the min, which is 1, and dividing by 2, which is 2 divided by 2. Our amplitude is 1. Choice 3 has an amplitude of 1 rather. Choice 4 has an amplitude of 1, because those are the numbers in front of the sine. Choice 2 also has an amplitude of 1. Choice 1 has an amplitude of 2, so we're going to take away that choice. I'm going to clear some space so we can look at the frequency and the period of the function. Remember how this is a sine function also? And sine functions usually start, right here you've seen it start at 0, 2. Sine functions usually start at the origin. So this means that we had a translation up 2 units. So we're going to expect to also see a plus 2 at the end, which happens in choice 2 and 4. Choice 3 is out. And our last consideration is going to be the frequency and the period. At x equals 0, it starts, and at x equals pi, you see pi radians, you see one full cycle, meaning that the period is pi. We're going to use that to find the b value, which is the frequency. We know that the period, the formula for period is 2 pi over b, and we know that the period equals pi over 1. We're going to cross multiply and solve. B times pi is pi times b, and this is equal to 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi. Divide by pi to get b alone. That frequency b is 2. And that 2 would be in front of x, making choice 4 our answer because the amplitude is 1. In front of x is your b value. And then your vertical translation, that was the 2 units that we went upward. The 2 units that we went upward here. The entire graph moved up 2 units. So you should have a plus 2 at the end. I'm going to come back to this question in another video. Now here we're looking at a graph. So let's first look at the amplitude. The amplitude, the highest possible value. The max here is positive 1. The min is negative 1, so we're subtracting a negative 1. And we're dividing by 2. The amplitude is going to be 1 plus 1, because when you have a double negative it becomes a plus, divided by 2. So the amplitude is 2 over 2, or 1. Choice 1 has an amplitude of 1, so does choice 4. Choice 3 is out because it has an amplitude of 2. Choice 2 is out because it has that 1/2 amplitude. And our next consideration is the period, so I'm going to use another color to represent that. Here we have the graph starting here, and when we get up to 2 pi, this is a cosine curve. We're only seeing half. By the time we get up to 2 pi, we're only seeing half of the curve, meaning that the frequency hasn't completed one full cycle. It's only completed half of a cycle, meaning that our b value should be half, because we haven't seen a full cycle. By the time it gets to 2 pi, we've only seen half of a cycle. That means that if we see half of the cycle by 2 pi, we'll see the full cycle by 4 pi. And the time it takes for that full cycle to complete itself would be 4 pi. If our b value is 1/2, as the choice says, we can find the period, which is the amount of time it's going to be for that full cycle to take place, by taking 2 pi and dividing by the 1/2 value, which would equal 4 pi, which is what we expected. We expected it to finish one full cycle. It's got to continue a full cycle, and at the 4 pi mark, that will happen.